A thunderous bang rattled the wooden walls of a remote cabin. Walter Hayes froze, his mug slipping from his trembling hand, coffee spilling across the table. Something massive was outside. The porch groaned under its weight. Another strike shook the door on its hinges, sending dust raining from the rafters. Walter's pulse hammered. He knew that sound. No man forgets it once he's heard it. A bear. But when he flung the door open, axe in hand, what he saw wasn't rage. It wasn't hunger. It was something far more shocking, something no one could have predicted. Stay with us until the end, because this is a story of desperation, trust, and a bond born from the unlikeliest of places. A story that will leave you speechless. The forest had been silent that morning. Too silent. The usual chatter of sparrows, the rustle of squirrels in the underbrush. Gone. Only the faint hiss of wind weaving through the pines. Inside that small, weather-beaten cabin, Walter sat in his worn rocking chair, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug. 73 years old, a widower, a man who told himself he liked the quiet. But even in the stillness, he had felt it. A tension in the air, a disturbance. And then the banging began. On the porch stood a massive grizzly. Her fur bristled, her golden brown eyes wide, pacing in frantic circles. But this wasn't an attack. This wasn't a predator sizing up prey. She was desperate. At her side stumbled a tiny cub, its head trapped inside a clear plastic bottle. Each breath came ragged, muffled. The cub clawed weakly at its prison, its tiny chest heaving, suffocation seconds away. Walter's breath caught. He gripped his axe tighter, his instincts screaming to retreat. One wrong move, and he'd never see another sunrise. But then, the mother bear swung her head, meeting his gaze. And what Walter saw in her eyes wasn't rage. It was a plea. Every muscle in Walter's body told him to turn back. Shut the door. Let nature take its course. But he couldn't. He stepped forward. Slowly. Deliberately. The cub's panicked cries cut deeper than fear ever could. Walter knelt, the scent of earth and fur thick in the air. The cub wheezed inside the bottle, each sound weaker than the last. Walter swallowed hard. This was madness. He was kneeling before death itself. With trembling hands, he slid the axe blade against the bottle's edge. "Easy now," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the cub's gasps. One sharp twist. Crack. The bottle split. The cub jerked violently, its head slipping free at last. It gulped air in ragged gasps, tumbling into its mother's fur. The grizzly let out a guttural roar. Walter froze, his entire body braced for the end. But it wasn't fury. It was something raw, something deeper. Relief. The mother nudged her cub close, licking its damp face. Then she looked back at Walter. For a breathless moment, man and beast locked eyes. He waited for her to strike, for the inevitable, but it never came. Instead, she released a low huff, a sound that shook his chest. Not a threat, a release, a message. And then, without another sound, she led her cub back into the trees, leaving Walter trembling in the dirt, unsure how he had survived. Days passed. Walter told himself it was over. Just a wild encounter. Nothing more. But 1 week later, when he opened his cabin door, he froze. There, on the porch, sat a honeycomb. Golden. Fresh. Its sweet scent carried on the crisp morning air. Walter glanced toward the tree line, but saw only shadows between the pines. He picked it up, stunned. The following week, another appeared. Then another. Every 7 days, without fail, the gifts arrived. Walter never saw her leave them, but he felt her presence, always watching, always near. A bond had been forged that day, not through words, not through reason, but through something far stronger. Trust. Walter had given life back to her cub, and in return, the wild gave him something he never thought he'd find again. Connection. No longer did he sit in silence, staring into the void of his empty cabin. Each honeycomb was proof that even in the untamed, brutal wilderness, gratitude could bloom. It was a pact, a gift, a reminder that he was not alone. This wasn't just the story of a man saving a cub. It was the story of a desperate mother's plea, a risk no sane man would take, and a bond that defied the laws of nature. Because sometimes the wild doesn't just take. Sometimes it gives back. And in the quiet of the Montana woods, Walter Hayes learned that some of the strongest connections in life are the ones we never see coming.